A historic alliance. It's not simply that it creates a union that's the largest higher education union of probably 300,000 higher education faculty members. But it's the largest affiliation of its kind. And I would argue it is game-changing for some of the arguments we just heard in those 3 resolutions, because it puts every unionized person in higher ed together to fight for the promise and the potential of higher ed. Accessible, affordable higher ed for our students, but also higher ed that's invested in, higher ed that has academic freedom, higher ed where there's no more precarity, higher ed where the courses that are taught are more important than the stadiums that are built. So this alliance could not happen at a more critical time. As we just heard, higher ed is currently the target of legislative attacks on academic freedom. Remember what Governor DeSantis just attempted to do in Florida. And our Florida affiliate, look, we immediately resorted to suing him, and there was a decision on a district court level that was amazing. And normally, DeSantis goes back because he owns the judges in Florida. He's appointed many of them to fight these things. This time he withdrew. But they're trying different ways. You see what Abbott is trying to do in Texas. And then there is a persistent what? And then there is a persistent underfunding that we just heard about. The explosive student debt that we heard about here, and that Senator Warren, I don't know if I just gave her a promotion or a demotion by calling her Governor Warren, that Senator Warren talked about so eloquently. But this is union work, to do this work, as people, again, you just said. And so joining forces with the AAUP is extraordinary. And I want you to meet someone who's become a very dear friend, the extraordinary leader, and a brilliant mathematician, by the way. She has been a professor at Fairfield University in Connecticut for nearly 40 years, and she's currently also the chair of the math department. At AAUP, she's working to address systemic and institutional issues. She's helping faculty recover. She and all of AAUP are helping faculty recover from COVID. They are addressing the student debt crisis. They are addressing so many of the issues we are as well. Joining forces is incredible. Let me introduce to you Dr. Irene Mulvey.
A little hot up here. Hello, AFT.
Hello, Irene.
On behalf of the American Association of University Professors, our elected leaders who are sitting in the visitor section behind number 7, on behalf of our chapters, our state conferences, our 45,000 members, thank you for all you do. The American Association of University Professors was founded in 1915. For the last 107 years, the AAUP has literally shaped American higher ed by developing professional standards and values for higher ed, and by organizing faculty, academic professionals, graduate students, postdocs, and anyone else engaged in higher education teaching and research. And we do this in order to ensure higher education's contribution to the common good, and because education is an essential component of democracy. AFT, you are a mighty, mighty powerhouse with your, thanks to the strength and the work of your 1.7 million members. The energy that I have seen in this room and at this convention is amazing. What a morning program, am I right? How can I follow that? Anyways, I know the Jumbotrons are great, but I wish you could see the view from up here. It's inspirational. This is what it's all about. You are what it's all about. People, members, delegates who believe in equity and opportunity for everyone, public workers, public service, good jobs, high quality and well-resourced healthcare, safe, welcoming, high quality childcare and public education, and higher education as a human right and a public good. You may know that the AAUP and the AFT have had a joint organizing agreement for the last 10 years or so, and we've renewed it every 3 years. You may know that the joint organizing we have done under those agreements has been incredibly successful, resulting in 11,000 new joint AAUP-AFT members over the life of the partnership. What we have seen is that the combination of AAUP's academic expertise and AFT's power is a winning combination. I'm going to give you a quick sidebar for this non-higher ed audience. In a nutshell, when I say AAUP's academic expertise, I mean essentially our defense of academic freedom and our promotion of shared governance. These are not just catchphrases to us. Academic freedom means those who teach have control of what they teach and how they teach it. There's more. Scholars can follow their research wherever it leads without interference. And that faculty will not be disciplined for intramural speech about the running of their institution or extramural speech that has nothing to do with their area of expertise. We have been defending this for 107 years. Shared governance means that demands that faculty have meaningful input into the running of their institutions and decision-making authority that's respected in areas of faculty expertise. We've been fighting for this for 107 years. So let me start again with the joint organizing, end of sidebar. What we have seen is that the combination of AAUP's academic expertise and AFT's power and might and resources and reach is a winning combination for organizing academic workers. Our partnership has been successful beyond either organization's wildest dreams, and so we've negotiated an ongoing affiliation which will make our partnership permanent. Yeah. Today is a historic day in the labor movement and the academic labor movement. Today, we will sign the affiliation agreement, celebrate this historic moment, and then look forward to getting back to work. I want to thank the AFT, and especially Randy, for initiating with us the discussions on a more permanent partnership. I want to thank the members of both negotiating teams who worked so hard over this last year or so. Now is the time to make the affiliation permanent because the threats to higher education have never been more serious than what we face today. Public education has been devastated by decades of disinvestment and underfunding. This has resulted in the crisis of contingency that threatens the entire profession and the explosion of student debt. AFT has done amazing work to fight to reduce and cancel student debt. We've heard the stories at this convention and the dollar amounts, it's incredible. The contingency crisis is ongoing. Scholars who spend years on their education and specialized training to become an expert in a field that they're passionate about, oftentimes resulting in lifelong debt, end up as workers in a gig economy, cobbling together courses on a part-time basis at several different schools, freeway flyers, we call them, scrambling to make a living, relying on public assistance to put food on the table. It is absolutely shameful what has become of the profession. The need to fight back and fight back harder has never been more crucial. Thank you. You can't hear that much backstage, but that resolution, I'm delighted that Resolution 11 passed unanimously. It's a great start. As Randy said, if she's reelected, she's going to get to work on it immediately, and I think that's a real opportunity to show the value of the partnership. Legislative interference is another existential threat to higher education. Over the last year, we've seen an unprecedented number of bills introduced in state legislatures that would impose government control on what can be taught in the classroom. Because they're being introduced at the state level, fighting back against them is like playing whack-a-mole. So again, I hope to see the value of affiliation on that front. But this isn't just unfortunate legislation. These bills are an attack on democracy. In a democracy, I don't have to tell you, but let's put it out there. In a democracy, there is no place for the government to control what can be learned and what can be taught in a classroom, to impose an educational gag order. And what is it they don't want college students to learn? The true and honest and complicated history of our country. Why don't they want college students to learn that? In order to preserve a white supremacist society and to maintain power in that white supremacist society. Not on our watch. It's our obligation. It is our obligation as educators, as parents, as people, as AFT, to fight back against those who would continue to prop up systemic and institutional racism at the expense of truth in education. And make no mistake about this, higher education is under attack because those who would like to see the U.S. move toward authoritarianism recognize the power of education. Authoritarian regimes control with misinformation, disinformation, and lies. Education and truth are the ultimate threat to those who would push us towards authoritarianism. And it's our job to get that education and truth out there. In other words, the time could not be better to strengthen the labor movement and to be building a more powerful academic labor movement in higher ed. Education and activism are what's needed to save our democracy. Education is what will move us forward toward a multiracial, pluralistic democracy in which every person has the opportunity to thrive, where equity and justice are bedrock principles we live by. where we help the most vulnerable, where we lift up the most needy. And activism, well, that's what gets shits done. So organizing is hard work. You all know that as well as I do. But our affiliation agreement builds power, and we will be stronger together. This book, also on my lapel, this book is the most recent edition of AAUP policy documents and reports. We call it the Red Book. I know Randy owns at least 2 Red Books, but I am going to present this to Randy to symbolize AAUP policies and standards being more deeply embraced by AFT higher ed, and to commemorate this historic affiliation. After that, I suggest we sign the thing and get to work. Thank you.
Oh, watch out.
Good.
So we're going to go over there and sign.
Okay.
Let me just, both unions, executive committees, and executive councils have approved the affiliation. The AAUP had a vote because they are affiliating into the AFT in June. And what was that vote?
Let's see. 93% of the delegates voted in favor of the affiliation.
And we thought that since this is so consequential, and this happened in June, instead of us signing it privately, that we would sign it and celebrate in front of all of our delegates.
Paul Davis, AAUP Vice President.
This is the document. The AAUP visitors, no, keep on dancing. The AAUP visitors, please find a way to take seats in the section. Because you ain't visitors anymore. I'm giving.
We're in a crisis mode. This is a problem. This is now a crisis of pretty much epic proportions.
Because New York State has failed to provide appropriate staffing and adequate resources.
New York State, it's time to fund our future.
We weren't surprised by the fact that there was not enough bed space, because several years before that, the governor designated a hospital called SUNY Downstate Medical Center for closure, and we fought to keep it open.
We want the governor to recognize that we are a people united.
This is not about simply saying, don't close downstate. This is about saying, we must grow downstate.
He then, during COVID, designated it as the only COVID hospital in New York State. Tens of thousands probably would have died had that hospital been closed. That's how the Fund Our Future campaign started, because we knew that there were things we talked about years ago that had they listened to us, we could have had better outcomes.
I work for the Department of Labor, Unemployment.
We said, let's have our members talk and be candid about their experience during COVID.
Been getting harder over the last couple of years because of us being short-staffed, covering multiple jobs.
We work on holidays, weekends, late nights.
We have some very long-term staff that are leaving for jobs that even pay a little bit less, just so they can have a normal life.
It was a HEF research scientist, a member of the union, that actually developed the first test for COVID. I can't say enough how municipal workers, state workers, county workers stepped up to keep the United States afloat.
You are the government. You are the government of the state of New York, and I thank you.
We had the new governor of New York come to our convention, take a look at our Fund Our Future campaign. We had about 16 priorities. The governor of New York took 8 of them and actually included that into her budget.
Sorry. Throughout the convention, we've been preparing either videos or statements and testimonials from the floor so that you see our members speaking. And you just heard Wayne Spence and PEF talk about the campaign to fund our future, but they also talked a lot about the campaign to save Downstate Hospital and Medical Center and medical college. And there were 2 unions that are affiliates that were very, very involved with that. 3, NYSET, of course, but one of the NYSET affiliates, UUP, was incredibly involved and led that campaign. And I asked Fred Cole, the president of UUP, to say a few words about this. Thank you, Fred. Microphone 2.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Fred Cole, AFT Vice President, Local 2190. When I became president in 2013 at UUP, I was told by a number of individuals that Downstate was doomed, that it was going to close or would be privatized. Indeed, we have over 13,000 members at 3 SUNY teaching hospitals, and they treat patients from being X-ray technicians to surgeons to nurse practitioners to be respiratory therapists who were crucial during COVID. At the same time, they are educating the next generation of desperately needed healthcare professionals. When I heard that there was the possibility that Downstate, in the heart of the African-American community and the immigrant community in central Brooklyn, could close, I turned to our national president, to Randy, to the leadership of NYSET, and to an amazing team of leaders at the Downstate UUP chapter, led by Rowena Blackman-Stroud. The campaign that was put together to save that hospital was a fight that, in fact, has never ended. As you saw on the video, as Wayne spoke about the constant cuts to the hospitals, literally, the 3 hospitals, these are public hospitals, received 0 public funding over the past 2 years. They had to survive on the patient revenue they could earn. And during COVID, the stress became incredible. In fact, if it wasn't for AFT or NICET or UUP going out and purchasing PPE, we would have lost hundreds and hundreds of our members who were saving lives all of our lives by the work that they did. The struggle continues. We need public funding for these teaching hospitals, for the healing work they do, but also for the training of the next generation of healthcare professionals who will be AFT members. So I salute my sisters and brothers who work in the SUNY hospitals, regardless of what union they're in, because at the end of the day, we are all AFT. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred, and thank you, Wayne. And I want to bring up, we have a very special rest of the afternoon, and we're going to end the afternoon with resolutions on healthcare and on women's rights. But right now, and you see, there's a bunch of green shirts that people are either wearing or about to wear. But before that, we have 2 panels. And you've noticed today, we've been very intentional of making sure that, or trying to make sure that every single one of our members and the communities we serve are seen. And one of the things that, and I heard it in all the lines when we have beseeched the Congress, you heard it from Senator Markey today, to get weapons of war off the streets. One of the places we are really trying to lean into is fighting for common sense gun safety. Every day, an average of 316 people in America are shot in murders, assaults, suicides, suicide attempts, unintentional shootings, police intervention. The CDC reports that gun violence is now the leading cause of death of children and teens. It is a public health emergency, and frankly, it is a uniquely American epidemic. So we're about to have a conversation. We're going to see a video first, but we're about to have a conversation with some of the activists, both educators and students, who are on the front lines of this fight. Now, our union has taken on the issue for years, and let me be really clear. There are plenty of responsible gun owners, including in this room, who do not believe that we should have weapons of war on the streets. And they are helping to lead this charge. And we're holding marches and lobbying elected officials and doing all the work that we need to do. And the bipartisan Safer Communities Act was a good start, but with every one of not only these mass shootings, but think about, as Stacy and so many of the folks from CTU remind me every day, think about the number of gun deaths that happen on the streets of Chicago and other places every single day. We did a roundtable outside the NRA meeting in Houston right after the Uvalde shooting. We joined with March for Our Lives on their June 11th day of action in cities nationwide. We organized in front of the Senate offices in Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania. And we will keep this conversation going until we get the common sense gun laws we need to save lives and prevent mass shootings. So let me bring the panel up. Do the video first? Okay, do the video first as the panel gets settled, and then I will introduce the panel. We have parents, we have teachers. We're going to talk about our lived experience.
I see the toll that being a generation raised under school shootings has taken on these children.
Some of you have been fighting in this movement longer than I've been alive, and yet here we are still fighting to end gun violence.
It's not about being a Republican or Democrat. It's about being a human being.
What I want to see from this, and what I will do personally, is organize parents, organize teachers, principals, community workers.
Never give up.
So once we're back in session, we're right there, knocking on those doors.
Never give up.
In Texas, we're being failed by our leaders.
Let's find the common ground. Let's have the energy. Let's stay engaged. Let's not be silent.
Keep my head up.
We are crying. We are sad. This is a moment of grief for all of us, and we're demanding that change happens.
Why can't we ban these weapons of war? They are not for hunting, they are for killing.
It's human to cry.
It frightens me that I can literally be anywhere and someone may decide to take my life just because they feel like it. It worries me even more that there are people who have the power to change things in this country, yet have done nothing.
We lost 2 members, Pearl Young and the police officer, Aaron Salter. They were both fantastic people.
Before coming here, we stopped at Tops, and there was a young woman, and she used some chalk, and she wrote, "Do something. We are going to do something." And our promise is that we will never give up.
Are you with me? Every educator, every student, every survivor, they are here to fight to make sure it never happens again.
Thank you to the American Federation of Teachers who are marching with us and into November and beyond.
I remember how much my teacher meant to me. In that moment where we were hiding inside of the corner of our classroom behind her desk, she took her arms and she hovered over us to protect us. Teachers need to be a part of this conversation. We're gonna keep marching till we get to where we need to get to, till it stops.
But never give up.
So, to my right, my immediate right, is David Hogg, who is a survivor of Marjory Stoneman Douglas mass shooting. He co-founded March for Our Lives and helped lead several high-profile protests, marches, and boycotts. He has challenged leaders, all leaders, to get over politics and get something done. He asks Americans to stand up, speak out, and work to get to a moral standard here. And he does this regardless of party affiliation. He inspires me every day, and he texts me, and he and I text virtually all the time. But his question is always, what do we do next to get something more done? Next to David is RuQuan Brown. He began organizing to end gun violence after his stepfather and a close football teammate were shot and killed. He advises March for Our Lives and is the co-founder of Love One, and Love 100, 2 organizations dedicated to bring resources to communities affected by gun violence. He is an amazing young man. And Sarah Lener, who is to my far right, not ideologically, is also a survivor of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, the tragedy there in 2018. She has taught for 20 years, the past 8 at Douglas. She co-founded Teachers Unified to End Gun Violence with Abby Clemens and Sari Beth Rosenberg, and Sari is in the audience as well. And Teachers Unified is a grassroots movement of American educators whose mission it is to elevate stories of gun violence in schools and communities and to change the environment, change the climate, influence policies, and make communities safer. And she is just devoted to both her work as an educator and to this work. And for those of you who don't know, Abby's not with us today, but Abby is a survivor of the, I almost couldn't say it, of the mass shooting in Sandy Hook in Connecticut. So without further ado, can I ask you first, RuQuan? Teachers and children are on the front lines of gun violence right now. To be an American is to, well, let me ask it this way. With the last 3 mass shootings, Uvalde, Buffalo, Highland Park, there has been a shift, at least in what I've seen, that everyone is now believing, or everyone I know, that not only could they be touched by this, but this could happen to them, and that there really is a gun culture now. Do you think it's inevitable, or do you think it can change?
Well, I think that, first, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here before teachers because, and all of the other beautiful people that pour into students, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the people in my communities who really cared about me, coaches, teachers, and all of the other staff in our schools. And so I'm really thankful. Thank you guys, you deserve that. I know it to be true that no sort of injustice is inevitable, but I also know it to be true that with the current fabric of this country, the injustice is inevitable. And I think that the best place to sort of change that is in our classrooms, because young people spend more time in our classrooms than we do at our homes. And it was in class that I learned what politics are. It was in class that I learned what voting is and those things. It was in class that I learned the concept of community as well. So I don't think that these things are inevitable, but I think that they do take an amount of self-sacrifice that we don't learn about in school. I think it takes more balls from people like myself to be willing to hold Congress accountable, hold our... And finally, and even for the people that are in our schools to hold each other and also hold Congress accountable, I think is what it's going to take.
Thank you. And that leads me to a question for David. Because, you know, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was passed, and then there was another mass shooting. And so you're pretty eloquent on the issue of what is progress. So tell us, what's your view of the Bipartisan Federal Safer Communities Act, and where do we need to go from here?
Look, I think it's progress, even if it's not as much as I would like to see. The reality is, with that bill, we knew if we had to have 10 Republican votes because of the filibuster, that it was going to count on us not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, because we have to focus on saving as many lives as we can right now with the current political situation that we're given. I think it is progress in that it's really what we're working with here is the journey of kind of 1,000 miles. And this isn't even a half step. This isn't even a first step. This is a half step, but it's still progress. And it's more than has been done in 30 years, me and RuQuan's entire lifetimes. The most that's been made at the federal level. And that's because teachers marched with us from AFT and so many other places across the country. It wasn't just teachers, it was janitors, it was coaches, it was nurses, it was all these other people that helped truly make this time different. Because while it wasn't enough, there was also substantial funding in that package for mental health in our schools, billions of dollars. What it's going to count on, though, what I need all of you to understand, and everybody who is watching this at home presumably as well, is that it is going to be essential that we make sure that money is spent on counselors and mental health and not incarceration of our students. Because while understanding the way that we work to eradicate the hatred that is driving many of these things is not through mental health, because people are not born hateful. People learn hatred. They learn racism. Intolerance is learned. It's not born in the first place. And we have to realize that it's going to start in our educational system and teaching our young people about love and justice. And the best thing that all of you can do in this room now that we've passed this law is that we've also passed over 18 at the state level to help change these things and prevent these horrible instances from happening. But I have to know that everybody in this room shows up at your state legislature every single year with us, because that's where this change is going to come from, is your state legislature. So show up there with us to help us change these laws and get our students the resources they need to succeed.
So let me ask, before I go to Sarah, let me ask both RuQuan and David this question. Because David made it very clear before June 11th that, in his view, it was really important for this time to be different, that students and educators marched together. And we have nurses here who marched with us as well. But why don't you talk just strategically why you thought that was so important?
Because we can't do this on our own as students. More than anything, we need the wisdom and education of people that have been in this fight long before us, and also know that they are in danger as well in their schools along with their students. Because parents shouldn't have to ask teachers how good of a shot they are, as we heard in that, when we talked. I remember hearing that. It's crazy, right? We have to work together in this, and we need as many people as possible. We know that the best way for us to get educated and provide the education that we need to train organizers, to train young people, to be the leaders that we have had but have had far too few of, is through our education system. And that's why it's critical we work with our teachers.
Yeah, and I think this is a part that is often left out. My stepfather was murdered when I was 16 years old in high school. I got a call coming home from school that my stepfather was murdered. I had a teammate murdered when I was 15 years old in high school. The first time I lost someone to gun violence, I was 5 years old in Seattle, Washington. I walked the streets of my neighborhoods afraid to lose my life, y'all. These are issues that my teachers don't necessarily experience in my neighborhoods, but they have to experience them through me as the student. People in my neighborhood are not attacking our schools. My neighborhoods are being attacked by very, very, very unjust legislation. My neighborhoods are being attacked by having no resources in our schools and in our homes. And so it's important for us to be here amongst teachers and to walk with teachers and to stand with teachers and to fight with teachers, because you guys need to know how to hold me when my father dies. You guys need to know how to hold hands with each other when your students are murdered. Because in our neighborhoods, I want to emphasize, in Washington, D.C., in Ward 8, in Ward 7, in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, when young people are being murdered, oftentimes teachers are not equipped to deal with that. And so that's why it's important, so that when you hear my voice, you can think beyond what the news is telling you about deaths.
Thank you. And so I'm going to turn to Sarah. I met Sarah after, and Anna Fusco and the Broward teachers are here as well, and I want to shout them out for the work that they have done. I also want to shout out the Newtown local for the work that they have done, and their state affiliates, both Connecticut and Florida. But Sarah, I remember meeting you. I think I probably barged into your room. Sarah is the yearbook advisor, and you took on this role of helping students emotionally, psychologically, dealing with this tragedy that happened in February, doing the yearbook that May, and really pulling together all of the testimonials. And then now you're doing Teachers Unified to End Gun Violence. So just give us two things. Give us a sense of how you did that year, and what is propelling you to form this new amazing organization. Everybody knows March for Our Lives. What we want is everybody to also know Teachers Unified to End Gun Violence.
Well, I want to thank you for including me in this panel. I genuinely don't know how we finished the yearbook in 2018. If there are any yearbook advisors out there, you know how difficult that task can be, compounded by what we went through. So we just had to, because we knew it was our story to tell, and we needed to drive the narrative. We needed to show that what happened to us didn't define us and still doesn't define us. It's a part of who we are, but we really worked hard to honor those we lost, talk about who they were and who they wanted to be, and not focus on what happened to them. And it just was a labor of love for 6 very long but very short weeks once school reopened after the shooting. And David was in and out of the room, never a student of mine, but was in and out of that space and saw how crazy it was. As for Teachers Unify, we formed after the shooting at Oxford High School in Oxford, Michigan. Abby Clements, Sari Beth Rosenberg, and I were all in a group chat, and we just decided that enough was enough. What is often left out of the conversation when it comes to gun violence is the voice of the teacher. We are the ones who help the students when they lose a parent. We are the ones who help and move forward after a school shooting. We are dealing with gun violence in our own communities. And it's so important to realize that school shootings, while they get the most media attention, are such a small percentage of the gun violence that occurs across this country. It is gun violence in Black and brown communities. It is gun violence against the LGBTQ+ community. It's anti-Asian, anti-Semitic, domestic violence. Suicide is gun violence. There's so much that goes into it. And even if you, as an educator, have never experienced a school shooting, and I hope and pray that you never do, you are still impacted by gun violence because of where you live, or where your school is located, or where your students live. And it impacts all of us intimately, tangentially. Like, we are all impacted by gun violence, and we knew, the three of us knew, that the teacher voice, the educator voice, was missing from every single conversation. Lawmakers want to determine what we do in our classrooms. We all do code red and lockdown drills that are traumatizing to us and to our students. And these laws and policies are being made by people who have never stepped foot in a classroom. Don't ask us what we think and what we want, and there's your policy.
So
as you can imagine, I have a ton of different questions for them, but I want to just, you know, we got about 5 minutes left, so I want to just ask you all. You have a group of 2,000 activists here. What do we leave them with in terms of going home on Sunday about what to do? Now, David already said each year we got to be at the state bodies and really keep moving this agenda. But you, Sarah, just raised the issue about the other gun violence. RuQuan raised the issue about just what happens in a child's life when people that child is close to get murdered. So all three of you, I don't care who goes first, what's our call to action to this group of incredible activists?
Well, I'm really excited to answer this question because I've been thinking about this by force because of the way that I grew up since I was 5 years old. And I recognize that my ability to be here and be a Harvard student and do the other things that I've done, invest in my community, and be what people call an activist, is only because of people like yourselves. It is only because my parents reminded me that I deserve life despite the things that were happening to and around me. It was only because I had teachers who were willing to invest in me beyond the 8 hours that we spent during the day. It was only because I had staff in the cafeteria who were willing to serve me regardless of if I could afford it or not. And so, what my call to action is for you, because I know that you care about your students getting an opportunity to grow into the people that they deserve to be, is to reach out to me so that we can work together, so that I can come to your school and bring my friends to your school to teach whoever needs to learn how to take care of young people. I know from my experience that every educator doesn't know all the things they need to know about how to prepare young people for the world. I've been able to see as a 20-year-old young man in the world of politics, in community, in school, in sports, and more, what it takes. I'm very, very accessible with the internet. My social media handle is on the screen. I'm calling you to reach out to me so that the infrastructure that I've put together through my nonprofit, Love 100, so that we can come and teach you guys and show you guys and guide you guys and answer your questions about how to ensure that young people like me when I was 5 can make it to this point and beyond, because we all deserve life.
Thank you. David.
I think beyond showing up at your state legislatures every year, which if there's one message that you take away from what I need you all to do, it's show up at your damn state legislatures every year, and not just that, but obviously vote, obviously try to get people to run for office and things like that. The other thing I want to leave you with is don't give up on students like me. I have dyslexia and ADD, and I had the privilege of going to some of the best public schools imaginable, and it's very likely that if I did not have that privilege and a mom who has also been a teacher for over 25 years, that I would not be on this stage right now. It is one of the hardest things that I ever had to do before all of this happened was learning how to read. And it was only because of my special education teachers and others who didn't give up on me because they had the resources they needed that I am here right now. So please, 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 do not, as hard as it is, and I've seen my mom, you know, she worked in Title I schools for much of her career. Some of the most important work is in the communities where you will not get credit for it, where you won't have parents that show up at the parent-teacher conferences, where you are helping to serve that role of raising that child. And should you have to do that? Absolutely not, but that's what we're all, unfortunately, that's the reality we face. And it's in those students, it's in those young Davids like me, that real change is possible. And it comes from you, so thank you. And don't give up on your students, and keep fighting for them.
Last word, Sarah.
Oh boy. I guess the biggest takeaway is to speak up and use your voice. If one of us is screaming, they're not going to hear. If we're all screaming, they can't ignore us.
And with that, I want to thank Sarah and David and RuQuan. This is our future.
And thank you
very
to you all.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. David just said the only place gun violence belongs is in our history books.
We can do better than that. Let's give them another big round of applause. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for continuing to follow our COVID protocols and wear your mask and badges at all times. Before tomorrow morning's session, please, this is just a housekeeping rule. Please take your second COVID test. If you did not receive one when you arrived, we can pick one up today. You can pick one up at registration today. After you take your super fun and comfortable swab test, we want you to upload your test results to our super easy Clear app. And yes, I'll continue moving on before somebody gets in and starts booing. And speaking of health issues, it's a very serious matter. It is now my honor to introduce to you Dr. Claudia Fegan, who is the Chief Medical Officer of the Cook County Health Organization in Chicago, and a nationally recognized public health advocate who is passionate about meeting her patients where they are and helping them understand their conditions. In her current role, Dr. Fegan provides executive oversight for the health system's medical practices and helps inform health policy initiatives, which for those of us who aren't doctors means she's a big deal. She sets the agenda for a major hospital system, whether it's how they care for their patients, how they interact with and serve their communities, and how they administer healthcare initiatives that affect thousands of lives. And Dr. Fegan, who has carried us through crises like the COVID pandemic, like the public health crisis of gun violence, and the opioid nightmare facing too many rural communities. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Claudia Fegan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have to give a special shout out to CTU, Chicago. School teachers are the most important people in our society. You mold the future. My father was a school teacher. He was a proud member of AFT. I will say that he was a union organizer early in life who was drawn to teach. In the late 60s, and you all from Chicago know what I'm talking about, and throughout the 70s, he led the fight and strikes, too many strikes, to limit class size, to make sure teachers were supported in the classroom, to ensure teachers were reimbursed when they spent money on teaching aids when they had none. It is sad to realize you are still fighting for those same things. My husband was a school teacher. He used to spend so much time printing articles on sports, fashion, music, and politics to teach his high school English students how to read. How could he teach them literature when they arrived at high school unable to read? Yes, I know the AFT. I'm proud to be here. I am here to tell you we're in trouble. We're in trouble. But you knew that before you went to bed last night. You know we have a Supreme Court that doesn't respect a woman's right to make medical decisions she might make in consultation with her physician. We're in trouble. We have a court that prioritizes gun rights over the safety of teachers and children in schools. We're in trouble. Healthcare in this country is in trouble. We are watching the corporatization of healthcare. We are watching the privatization of Medicare. We are watching individuals lose control of the care they receive. 75% of teachers in this country are now employed by someone other than themselves, as they were a generation ago. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. When you work for a system, sometimes you can offer your patients services you don't have access to in a small office. Sometimes in a system, you can have wraparound services like dietitians and physiatrists. You can help patients get more of the things they need. But you must be concerned about who is in charge, who is making decisions, and why are they making those decisions. When profit starts to drive clinical decisions instead of safety and clinical benefit, you have to be concerned. The Trump administration started a program called DCE, Direct Contracting Entities, which allowed companies to insert middlemen between patients and the care they receive. Now, these entities may or may not have had previous experience in healthcare delivery. Some of them were venture capitalists who were just investing in the business of healthcare. There's a sense, not wrong, that since we spend trillions of dollars in healthcare, that there's a lot of money to be made in healthcare. They're not wrong. Healthcare is an over $4 trillion industry in the United States. The problem is when you allow middlemen to insert themselves in roles that can limit access to care, and then you tell them they can keep 40% of what they don't spend on the delivery of health care as profit, some people might believe you won't make good decisions. Some people might say you're placing a strong incentive not to deliver care. The outcry against DCEs was so loud, the Biden administration was forced to act. Unfortunately, they didn't act to end the program. They changed the name. It's now called ACO REACH. I love how the government comes up with names so they can obfuscate what they're doing. ACO REACH stands for Accountable Care Organization Realizing Equity, Access, and Community Health. It's supposed to encourage healthcare providers to coordinate care to improve the care offered to people with Medicare. The problem is, people who have enrolled in traditional Medicare can be placed in this program without their consent or realizing it's happened. Often people choose traditional Medicare to maintain control over who is providing who they see and where their care is provided. Now, if they happen to live in an area that's been targeted for the program, or they're seeing a primary care provider who's employed by an entity that enrolls in ACO REACH, the patients are unknowingly placed in the program. What we can tell about the program with its new name is it gives more lip service to equity. It requires more reporting on efforts to adhere to health equity. But the amount of payment that can be withheld for not meeting quality standards has dropped from 5% to 2%. And the only way a patient can opt out of the program is to find a new primary care provider. Now, why am I telling you about this program? I'm telling you because we're in trouble. I'm telling you because when we start putting profits ahead of patients, we all suffer. When government starts to support corporate greed over personal freedom, we all suffer. I'm telling you because we have to begin to look at the big picture. We have to begin to fight back. We have to fight back. We already spend enough on health care in this country. We spend enough money to provide access to health care for every man, woman, and child living in this country. I didn't say citizen, I said every man, woman, and child living in this country. The main problem is we allow too many people who are not involved in the delivery of health care to take profit from it. Why is that? Why do we do that? I told you, health care is a $4 trillion industry. There are 3 health care lobbyists for every 1 member of Congress. This is about change and how we make change happen in this country. We make change happen in this country with unions. Strong, powerful unions make change in this country and around the world. The United States is the only industrialized country in the world that does not guarantee access to health care. The only one. I told you, we already spend enough on health care to guarantee access to everyone who lives here. We already spend enough. We already spend enough, and yet medical illness or medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy. Why? How can that be? We let too many people who are not involved in the delivery of health care take profit from it. Profit. Look at the skyline of most big cities in this country. If you don't see a big insurance company or big pharma lining the skyline, I'll eat the paper this speech is written on. Profit. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to people making a profit or earning a living. I'm opposed to lining the pockets of the wealthy on the back of sick people while we deny them care they need. There's a better way. Single-payer national health insurance is the answer, and improved Medicare for all. We could take care of everyone. Who doesn't deserve access to care? Who? Now listen, because this is the most important point, and this is why I came here from Chicago today. No country has ever gotten to universal health care without the support of labor, unions, or a strong labor party. Labor. Labor is the key. This is my fight. This is your fight. This is our fight. We're in trouble and we have to fight back. We have to fight for the society we want. We have to fight for a society that will take care of each other. We want health care that makes decisions based on need, not greed. We want a system that takes everybody in and leaves nobody out. Is that so hard? Can you say it with me? Everybody in, nobody out. Everybody in, nobody out. One more time. Everybody in, nobody out. Thank you.
I see people at microphone 3. Would you like to identify yourselves?
I very much would. My name is Misha Hunt, and I am from the fair state of New Mexico, and we are so happy to be here today. We'd like to share a little bit about the journey that we have been on and how impactful being here to witness the progress and change is. We were in disbelief as the pandemic unfolded. We watched, gripped by fear, but rushing in to care for our patients as we were trained to do. The pandemic has touched every part of our lives and highlighted the fragility of our healthcare system and the damage of corporate greed, prioritizing profit over the care of our patients and staff. As you mentioned yesterday, President Weingarten, the staggering statistics, 30 to 50% of nurses are leaving the profession related to burnout. And worse than that, the suicide rates are increasing. We do not want to watch any more of our colleagues walk away from this profession, and we certainly do not want to bury any more of our friends. We felt helpless and vulnerable, and we knew something needed to change at our hospital, but we knew we needed help. And we found AFT, and we decided to organize. Because, I mean, after all, what could go wrong trying to organize a union during a pandemic?
Hello, my name is Mauro Fernando Montañez Andrade, or for my non-Spanish speaking friends, Maui. As my coworker Misha said, AFT was what we needed. They helped us create a United Health Professional of New Mexico, a union that has and will continue to help teach us how to stand up for ourselves. And though our fight has been long and hard, we have not been alone. Not only has AFT had our backs, but they have also been at our sides through this whole process. We were told by our employer that we couldn't unionize under public or private sector. So what did AFT do? They helped us change legislation. And after a long legal battle, it's nice to say that as of May 18, we are now able to unionize in the public sector.
Hello, my name is John Lujan. I am an X-ray technologist with the United Health Professionals of New Mexico, who has worked hard to help organize our hospital. We continue to fight knowing that we have the full support of the AFT. Though our journey has been long and difficult, we have found the support that we have needed from AFT, and now we will have a union to represent our hospital workers. At this time, I would like to thank Randy Weingarten and the AFT Executive Board, the AFT Organizing Department, AFT of New Mexico, President Whitney Holland, and the AFT New Mexico Executive Board. With all the help from everyone mentioned, our dream of having a union at our hospital is becoming a reality. Thank you for hearing our story.
That's organizing. Thank you for believing in the possibility of it getting better through a union. And, you know, you're going to all decide whether we're trying all sorts of different things today and yesterday, getting all these voices up here. And we've been doing healthcare and also community issues this afternoon. And we're going to do the women's rights amendments right after this. So I'm giving people about 10 minutes of warning. But I want to bring the panel up and do the video, and I will introduce the panel after we see this video. No video? Just the panel. Okay, I'm bringing the panel up. Women's rights committees, get ready. You're up right after the panel. We are a union of public employees, of nurses and healthcare, higher education, of pre-K through 12. And most of the time on this stage, we talk about K-12. And you see today, we've been really intentional about talking about and making sure all of our members are seen. And today, yes, what we have here is a panel on healthcare. And I'm going to introduce January Belcher, Joel Hernandez, and John Brady. But about a decade ago, sorry, I'll take my mask off, we passed a resolution on creating a healthcare system, and you just heard from our wonderful speaker, a healthcare system that puts patients over profits. And in the last convention, we passed a resolution about creating a healthcare system that works for all. And we all know it's broken. And today, between our speaker, between Claudia and this panel, we really want to continue the conversation about what we need to do, particularly on the issues we're facing right now. Issues like workforce sufficiency, retention, pipeline, working conditions, staffing, violence, fatigue, and mental health. Healthcare workers are facing all of that. So these three folks work every single day in healthcare. And I want to see if we can really hear from them what is going on right now. So January Belcher is an RN from the Ohio State University, IO, and the Wexner Medical Center. Joel Hernandez is a nurse, an RN from St. Charles Medical Center in Bend, Oregon, and I remember meeting you in Bend. And John Brady, who many of you know, is an RN from AFT, Connecticut, and the head of our RN PPC. So, and if you want, so let me just ask, people are leaving the health professions in record numbers. This includes newly trained nurses who leave the profession in the first 5 years. It also includes so many of our PTs, OTs, respiratory therapists who also leave. And there is a huge crisis in the pipeline too. So, how do we deal with retention?
Are you directing that for me?
I'm directing it. I'm going to start with January. Yeah.
All right. For retention, the first and foremost thing is the CEOs and the powers that be, leadership, need to recognize how valuable our experience is. They need to acknowledge that you can't function without the experience and the skill set of the people that have been there forever. Schools can teach you so much. Clinical experiences, fantastic. But the real world, textbook, and bedside are two completely different things. And the things that you learn from older nurses like myself and so many others that I work with is invaluable. And some things you won't find in the textbook. So you need to take care of the people that are there, the people that gave their blood, sweat, and tears to make that organization flow. You have to pay them. You have to pay them what they're worth. We shouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck. None of us should. whatever profession that you're in, you never should have to live paycheck to paycheck. You need to give the money. You're making billions of dollars. You have the audacity to have $250,000 bonuses given to your CEOs, but yet you want to have your staff struggle. It makes no sense. So you need to reinvest that money into the proper channels. Give us the money, give us the benefits that we deserve, make our environment safe, make the ratios safe for patients so we can deliver excellent care. And honestly, if you want people to come in, there is money out there that you can, again, maybe take away some from our military that we're not using and put it back into grants and funds. Let teachers go to, people that want to become educators, people that want to become nurses, go into the medical field, let them go to school for free.
Yeah.
I was like, there's a way to make that happen.
Like the GI Bill.
Like the GI Bill. Attract people to our professions because these are the professions that are struggling.
Yep.
So show us the money.
And I'm going to go to Joel next in terms of pipeline. But, in the health, every single one of our members in healthcare know the following word, travelers. It's not the insurance company. So why is it that travelers, which are essentially substitute nurses, why is it that they make more than the nurses that are connected to a hospital?
They deserve it. Frankly, to cap one person is to cap all of us. The problem isn't our travelers, the problems are the CEOs and the leadership because they don't want to value the people that have given their blood, sweat, and tears to that organization. The travelers, it's the same kind of concept where, why we have racial disparities and all this stuff. If you pin people against each other, then it's easier to break it down and stay at the top. The problem is never our travelers. The problem is our administration and our leadership not taking care of their business and trying to pin it on somebody else. I'm sorry. Did I take one of y'all's questions?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
See what? We wanted this panel. Okay, Joel, what about the pipeline? What do we do?
I mean, we have to invest. We have to invest in our future. And that's a concerning thing I see all the time is these, it's not derogatory or anything, but they're brand new baby nurses that come through. I've always been taught, as you come in as a new nurse, and I remember this, it seems like yesterday, 15 years ago when I was a brand new nurse, they would come to me and my instructors, my mentors would tell me, Joel, okay, you graduated nursing school, that's great. Now you're really gonna start learning, right? And these new students are coming in and don't have the mentorship that they need, the support they need, the mental health they need. Because especially these last 2 years, we went through shit. We went through hell, right?
Yes, we did.
And what happened to these students, or these new nurses, these brand new baby nurses, they got crushed. They had no support. They didn't have the mentorship that they needed and deserved to help them grow, and they leave. I don't blame them, I don't blame them. So we need to invest in them. We need to invest in mentorship, mentors. We need to invest in education. We need to invest in the mental health of these individuals. Or this is gonna be our future. The future that is gonna take care of me and my child, my father, they're leaving. They're not gonna be there. And we just need to invest in support.
So investment and support, which means that all of us, we're gonna get to this resolution on that healthcare staffing shortage, and part of the pipeline issues are part of that resolution. Right. And it means all of us have to invest in our new people coming into the pipeline.
Absolutely.
So this leads me, I know this is just a taste of this, but John Brady, just like there's all these words, travelers, pitting travelers against community nurses. There's all these words around ratios and committees and staffing. Staffing, staffing, staffing. The human impact is not, what happened in COVID is not sustainable. And of course, we've been advocating for a violence standard, and Joe Courtney, one of our heroes, has been trying to push that as well as Senator Baldwin from Wisconsin. But I really want to hear your perspective on two topics. Staffing. What should we do? Staffing limits, ratios, both? What should we do? And then I'm going to talk to all of you about violence and fatigue and mental health. And we're going to do all of this in the next 6 minutes. Staffing.
Thank you, Randy. So, yeah, both and more. There's nothing wrong with committees other than the fact that they don't necessarily work. They have a purpose. We should have staffing committees. We should have safety committees. They do serve a purpose, and they do work as far as a place to discuss things. But in most cases, they don't have teeth. We need that, and we need minimum safe staffing levels, safe patient limit levels. But I think we need one more thing, and this is in the bill that's in Congress that Senator Brown has out. You trust a nurse to titrate medicine. Titrate medicine means you're on an IV drip, and you trust that nurse within certain parameters to speed up the drip or slow it down to keep you alive, to keep you sedated at the right level. You trust the nurse to do that. Why don't we trust nurses to say, or any health professional, to say, this assignment that you're giving to me, because there's too many patients, because my experience level isn't in this discipline, because my experience level is I haven't been around enough years, this is not a safe assignment for my patients. I need less of an assignment. Why is it not that the nurse can say that? And that is in the Senator Brown bill. So then when I say X plus, that's what I mean by plus.
Yeah.
So the two other issues, the one other issue I want to deal with, and then I want to ask all of you one very poignant question. What do we do about violence? I think that people don't really know the violence that happens in hospitals now against nurses and healthcare professionals. Okay, people saw what happened in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. But there's violence every single day against healthcare professionals.
Every day. That's always been kind of a major topic for me and kind of something a passion of mine. I've worked mostly emergency room and trauma. And so we see a lot of violence that comes through there. I've been involved in one active shooter. I've been tased trying to help a police officer that was getting choked out by an inmate at the hospital in the emergency room. My wife recently was in the emergency room admitting a patient, and a psychiatric patient somehow got into the ER with a gun and discharged it, hit the oxygen tank, and thank God it did not blow up. She was 10 feet away, still traumatized, right? We get assaulted by these patients, and administration comes down and tells us, what could you have done different, Joel?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
What can you have done different I mean, you really should have tried to figure that out with that patient. And excuse me, like, are you goddamn kidding me? You know, it's insulting. Like, there's no accountability for these administrators in the hospital. They're way more concerned about they're less concerned about my safety than the damn depressed Gainey score that patient might have, you know? It's horrible. And so what do? I mean, we need laws that say that assaulting a healthcare worker is a felony. In my opinion.
Absolutely.
You know, why are we constantly getting assaulted and getting reprimanded by our administrators that we should have done something different?
And this is we get 2 more senators in the Senate and we keep the House, this violence prevention standard in OSHA, we will get enacted in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. There's a lot of stress in healthcare. All 3 of you are engaged in healthcare every day when you're not here. So what do you do to deal with fatigue and burnout? Each of you. What do you do? And yes, thank you for thanking them.
Go first.
For me, I do weekly chiropractic visits because my back is trash from moving 300+ pound patients without equipment. Put that in there. And massages. Luckily, my particular institution, our insurance pays for a certain portion of that. I like to be at home. COVID, when it hit and we had to stay home, that was right up my alley. I am an introvert by nature. I can function as an extrovert, but I'm okay with being at home. I have an amazing family and a supportive family. My sister's a teacher, my brother-in-law is a teacher, my mom's a retired police officer. So they get it, I get them. But I love my family, I love being at home. You have to pour back into yourself so you can pour back out to others. If we don't take care of ourselves, and I don't care what profession you're in, anything where you're dealing with the public, you have to pour back into yourself. You are nothing. You can do nothing for anyone else if you can't take care of yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to get your mind right, get your body right. You have to take care of you in order to be able to take care of somebody else. So whatever it is that you like, I do not recommend drinking all the time. Let's not do that all the time. Wine is great, but as that being a part of my profession, I do not want to have to see you get a transplant. However, I mean, really find something that's positive, that's uplifting, that pours back into you. If you have a book, go to your favorite coffee shop, get your favorite coffee, go to Starbucks and get those union drinks. Sit on your back patio, go for a walk. That is, it's something else to like clear your mind in a beautiful setting. Go for a walk, do something for you and not take your kids or your helpmate or significant other. No, leave them behind. Do it for yourself and then pour back.
Joel, and then John.
How do I cope? I'm gonna be honest. I don't have time to cope. I don't have time to cope. I see my colleagues going through the same thing. The issues they're facing, the constant being understaffed, the constant berating by the administration to, you need this education, you need to do better, you need to do this better for this patient, we're wasting money there. So I guess the way I cope is I try to fight for them and figure out what I could do to make their job a little easier. And I don't want sympathy or anything like that. I mean, that's just, I don't have time because I feel like
Action is the recognizable feature of hope.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not at the bedside anymore. I draw a lot of energy from my members. The people, these young people like this, and the people in our locals, and I reach out to them and stay connected with them and draw energy off of them in the community groups we're working with, you know. And when we have those small wins, when we push back against those big health corporations, and you know, and when we get some wins against them, that gives me a lot of good feelings and energy.
Like we're going to do against Hartford Health.
Right, we're doing like we did, and I know we're running late. Like we did just the other week against Hartford Health, when after 2 years of fighting to save labor and delivery at Wyndham Hospital, the state stood with us and against Hartford Health.
Exactly right. And I see the Connecticut folks standing up. So look, these two panels were just a taste of who you are and who the communities you represent and serve are. So I just want to say thank you, January, thank you. Joel, thank you. John, thank you. Our nurses and healthcare professionals, they need our support. We need them and they need our support. Thank you. That was amazing. You were amazing. Thank you. And thank you for that answer, Travis. Okay, I'm going to bring up the Women's Rights Committee. Nope, first I'm going to microphone 2.
Madam Chair, my name is Michael Mulgrew, Local 2, New York City. Thank you. I rise and I'm joined by my friend and co-chair, Carl Williams, but we are rising to introduce a special order of business concerning the adoption